Hey, my name is Nat and I'm relatively new to YouTube, but I do sew by the Bad Seamstress on Instagram and TikTok, and I kind of want to start exploring YouTube videos. So this is my first one. I apologize in advance for some bad editing or bad noise, but today I'm going to make the Aura Pinafore by Soften Studios. I have the pattern here printed in AO size, so I need to put it together and cut it out or trace it out, and then we will get to cutting out the fabric. So let's get started. Before we start, I just want to say if you're looking for a step-by-step tutorial and in-depth instructions on this pattern, this is not the video for you. This is just me speaking to the camera and sharing my experience. So I've gotten rid of all the bulk. Now I need to put all the pieces together before we trace. I'm just referring to the instructions about how to put it together, and there's no instructions for AO, it's only A5. And it's just concerning to me that these lines here go up and don't match up here. So we'll see how it works out, but I think I'm going to try and cut these facing pieces on the fold. That's definitely the fold line, so it just saves a bit more fabric because I'm not sure how much fabric I'll have. So I've cut out all my pattern pieces and now I'm going to trace it. I usually don't trace, I usually just cut out whatever size I want, but that has now come back to haunt me as I've put on a little bit of weight and all of my patterns are one size. So I use this trace and toil. I get it from Spotlight, which is a shop here in Australia, and I just roughly cut out my pattern pieces and then lay this over the top and trace whatever size I want. The only patterns I don't need to cut out are the pockets, so they're cut out perfectly with the notches. So now we get to tracing. So when I trace out my patterns, I always use a Sharpie. It can do a little bit of damage to your paper pattern, but I have not found a pen yet that stays on this type of synthetic fabric. So I just go with Sharpie, then I can see it, then it's easy for next time. I'm still getting used to this whole tracing out pattern pieces, so I'm notoriously bad at putting the notches in. So let's hope I'm a little bit better this time. So now it's time to cut out the fabric. This is a light stretch but heavy denim from the fabric store that I bought online a little while ago. It has the tiniest little bit of stretch, but I think I only have 2.5 to 3 meters of this. I think the pattern needs 3.5 meters, something like that. So this is why I'm not using my projector to cut the pattern pieces. I want to try and fiddle around with it to try and get the most out of the fabric. So I want to get the main outside pieces out of the denim, and then all of the lining and facings I'm going to try and patchwork together out of some scrap fabrics. So I got both front and back pieces fitting on the fabric, and I think I'm going to have enough to do the hem facing and possibly the lining all in this one fabric. So that's great because I did not want to have to go to Spotlight. So all of my pattern pieces are done, all out of the one fabric, which I'm really excited about. And then all I was left with was these scraps that I won't be able to make much out of, but I'll keep them anyway. So I've had a look through the pattern, and it sort of darts first, put the front and back panels together at the center seams, and then overlock everything. I think before I get started though, I am going to overlock all the raw edges just to save myself a bit of time. I currently have white thread on my overlocker. I don't think I'm going to change it to black. I don't really care that much. So I'll start doing some prep. What you doing, Nimble? So all the overlocking is done and my ironing board is set up for sewing. So I'm going to start off with attaching the back and front pieces at the center seam, and then I want to do some top stitching on top. But my new machine is a little bit iffy on certain top stitching threads, so I'm going to just try it on a scrap piece of fabric first. I've got this from my grandmother's stash. It's just a really light beige colour. I think it'll be really nice contrasting with the blue denim, but as I said, I just want to test it on a scrap piece of fabric before I commit to it, because yeah, my machine likes to eat top stitching thread, it would seem. So I've just folded the fabric in half to actually mimic what the machine has to sew through on the finished product. So let's see how it goes. Okay, seems to have worked. So I've got some top stitching thread. Oh my god, the focus on this, I'm so sorry. I've gone back and forth for a little bit now since cutting out this pattern on what type of pockets I want. This pattern has both patch pockets on the side and then inseam pockets, and you choose which one you want. I think I'm going to do patch pockets. You put them on at the end, which is great because I didn't mark out where they're meant to go on the pattern, but I want to make sure that they don't sit right on my hips, only because that's the widest part of my body. I don't want to make it any wider than it needs to be, so I just want to see where they end up, and if I don't like the look of them, I'll just go without pockets for this one, and I'll put inseam pockets in the next time I make this pattern. Getting a bit of an afternoon storm rolling through at my house. So if you're looking for a really good tutorial on the Burrito Method, this is not it. I have just tried to film it twice and I got confused in it. So these are one of those techniques that I actually just have to zone in and do it myself, and then come out the other end and everything's kind of perfect. But I will link some of the tutorials I've followed in the past, and some really good ones for you down in the description box, because the first couple of times doing this, it is really confusing, and then it just becomes sort of like a little bit of dark magic that you're able to do without following a tutorial, but you can't really explain to anyone else. So I will come back to you when my burrito is rolled up, and then I'll show you where we are going to sew. Burrito is rolled, so the entire dress is rolled inside this, and what we're going to do is sew along this seam here, being careful not to catch any of the fabric inside. To make this less bulky, I have pressed one seam facing one side and the other seam facing the other. So on the outside it's facing one way, the lining it's facing another, and I've done the same with the darts. So the darts aren't really bulky. So then once we have sewn along here, we pull it out and it will be neatly sewn together. Okay, one sleeve is done. You need to be warned, there is so much fabric in this dress that pulling it through that tiny little area is really difficult, so just take your time and go slow. So my last step for today is going to be attaching the side seams. So I've done the Burrito Method on both armholes and they are sewn in now, and I've just given them a press. So now I'm going to attach the side seams. So you want to attach the lining piece, the seams for the lining piece where the armhole is together, and make sure they line up, and then attach straight down this. Okay, I've taken it in at the sides and just run it out. I really like how it fits now. I think if I'd done the size smaller, it would probably sit up a little bit higher, but I'm not mad that it's a bit low. I will wear something underneath it. In winter, I will wear a jumper as well, so that will all be covered. That's fine. I just think it's just very, like, fits a lot nicer now. Good jump, girly. So these are my labels. I buy them on a shop called the Dutch Label Company, I think. These are iron-on labels, but what I've started doing to make them a little bit more substantial is I get scrap fabric. I just go through with a can't remember the word, zigzag pair of scissors, shearing, can't remember, and I sew them onto, I glue them onto that, so then when it's on the back of the dress, it's a little bit more substantial. So I have made my label. I decided to take some of the denim and just flip it over. So for the contrast, use pinking shears, and then I did a zigzag stitch around the label to stitch it on. And then I've just sewn down in the ditch on the side seams so the facing is secured to the dress, so when I put it on it doesn't come up. And I think I might also do maybe a bit of a securing stitch down the center back seam just to the label, just so it's a bit more secure. So now we're going to do the facing. I think it will just be simply attach the two back and front panels at a centimeter seam, and then you attach right sides to right side of the dress at the end, stitch around, and then flip it inside. I could have explained that a lot better, I'm sorry. I've pinned the hem facing to the right side of the dress. What we do now is sew around, and then I will iron it, flip it over and iron it up so it sits on the inside of the dress. And then I'm going to do some top stitching around to stitch it in place. So I feel a little bit inspired by a post from Soften Studio who made this pattern. I'll put it up on the screen. I'm going to do 2 rows of top stitching at the top of the hem facing, and that will be consistent with the 2 rows of top stitching I've done down the front and the back panels. So I'm going to swap my cotton over on my machine and start stitching. This is what I mean by my machine eats my top stitching thread. Okay, I've cleaned, I've oiled my machine, and I've moved the placement of the cotton. So let's see if it gets eaten up now. So I've got the first line of stitching done. I kind of moved it away from the bulk just to make sure it kind of sewed through, and it sewed through perfectly once I'd oiled the machine. What I've done is I'm just going to line the side of my zipper foot up with the other top stitching line, and what I have done is I've moved my needle over the furthest it will go without running into the foot when it sews, and that means that it will, if I line it up, it'll be an even sort of centimetre double stitch. So the last step is for me to figure out where to put pockets. I assume it's just a fold down and top stitch. To be honest, I haven't really read the instructions the entire time, so I'm just winging this. So I'm gonna put the patch pockets on, and I'll do that off camera, and then I'll put some footage in of the final dress.